something gets in the way, something very small, like your shake awake thing doesn't work or something like that, that red dot doesn't appear, it's not a simple problem.
Right, that's a complex problem.
Yeah, it's a complex problem. It's a hugely complex problem because it requires a creative response in that moment.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Form and Function, a celebration of the most elegantly designed products in the world. And for this first episode, we're going to take a look at Aimpoint. For this journey, we are actually joined by an incredibly awesome guest, Duane Buckner. He's the Director of Training at Aimpoint. And for those of you that don't know, Aimpoint invented the red dot optic, something we largely take for granted today. But Duane's going to walk us through this incredible story of invention and innovation. And his experience, which is vast and rich, comes largely from his career spent in the United States Coast Guard, but also as a trainer, synthesizing information for students. We think it's a really, really phenomenal story, and we hope you guys enjoy the show. So Buck, by your own words, you're not actually a gear guy.
I'm not.
So in this role as Director of Training for Aimpoint, did you see this role when you were still on active duty for your post-active duty life and career?
No, I didn't. I had a passion for training, teaching, imparting knowledge or helping people synthesize information. But to say that I saw it, no, I probably didn't. I had an affinity for Aimpoint because I certainly. Well, I've told you the story before, but I had other things that weren't as they weren't as reliable. Yeah. And when I found this thing, it was kind of it was a moment for me when I found the Comp M4 and then the T2, and so I really kind of attached myself to those things. They meant a lot to me, totems. They really were. Mm-hmm. And so when I got out, it was kind of this fortuitous meeting. And I just jumped at the chance to work for them. So it was more providence, I think, than plan. Yeah.
Well, and it's a particularly interesting and unique story how you and Aimpoint intersected, right? That nexus is kind of a unique experience. Do you want to shed a little bit of light on that? I think that would be.
Yeah. So I was working for Tillert Group. They're still in business. Great company. They down in Southeast Georgia. They have a facility down there. I was teaching night vision. I was teaching a whole lot of SWAT teams and general firearms stuff. Well, they had a contract with Aimpoint to deliver training called Aimpoint Academy, and I did that for them for a long time, and got to be very good friends with the folks at Aimpoint. They really liked the way I taught, and I really liked their culture inside the company, and got along with folks. And so I was probably 2 years. I think it was 2 years. And they asked me to come on board, and I really thought it was just going to be as a trainer, which I was perfectly happy to do. You know what I mean? And then when they finally made the approach, I wasn't ready for the responsibility.
Well, and it's quite a laugh. We just experienced it today, right? So it's quite an experience.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to do this.
It was awesome. So Aimpoint started as a hunting company, right? Can you tell us how hunting has influenced the products that we see from Aimpoint today?
Yeah, that's really a fascinating question, and I think an interesting answer. If you go to Malmö, Sweden today, where the company's headquartered, and you walk through the factory, first of all, it looks kind of like an IKEA. Everything is beautiful. Everything is very simple and Scandinavian design, everything. But there are mounts all over throughout the factory. It's the neatest thing. So hunting informs just about everything Aimpoint does. It's a fascinating thing. So we were, I think you and I have had this conversation probably several times, but when they created the first, sites for hunting, they just kind of endowed them with a toughness, and that is just kind of carried right on through. The hunting culture in Sweden is very different than it is in America, and it's very generational, and you get the sense that this gun has belonged to this family for 300 years or something like that. Certainly the land is.
So it's very heirloom driven.
Exactly right. Yeah. So that kind of, I suppose that's maybe one of the reasons that Aimpoints are just so fail-proof. They're just so absolutely tough, and so I guess that's probably the chief way that hunting has influenced at least the American the American use of these, or the rest of the world use of these. yeah, they're still very much involved in hunting. In Europe, in fact, if you talk to a lot of folks, Aimpoints are hunting optics. You know, if you ask Swedes, you know, they shoot driven boar, which is just a blast, and ducks and all kinds of stuff with them. So it's at the heart of the company, and it has kind of radiated from that. That toughness that they endowed in those first sites has kind of radiated from that. So I think that's a gift to the way we use them today, the way I used them when I was in the military, whatever. Yeah, it's certainly a gift from that initial desire for this, you know, for this company to make these things extremely tough, because that's in the tradition of Swedish hunting, you know.
Yeah, and it's very different if you ask any American.
Yeah.
What do you use an Aimpoint for? Hunting is usually not the first.
No,
answer.
It's not. It's absolutely not. Yeah, we're not. Aimpoint is not really known for that here. I mean, I'm sure that there are people that do it, especially in the East. You know, if you're shooting a deer under a tree at less than 10 yards, well, you know, you really don't need a magnification for that. I hunt with a Glock pistol, deer hunt with a 10 millimeter pistol with an acro on it. You know, but you're right. It's much more assimilated to military and law enforcement use. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's, you know, they're great for it. That's how I came to know the brand.
Right.
It really is, you know.
Your own personal experience with it on
Absolutely.
duty.
Yeah.
So speaking of military, Aimpoint is predominantly known for its military and law enforcement products in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Do military and law enforcement customers, culture, consumers, etc., do those clients inform Aimpoint product design the way that hunting informs Aimpoint product design? So in other words, does the process work in reverse here in North America?
Yeah, it does. So a great example of that's our new Duty RDS.
Mm-hmm.
It is in direct response to what American law enforcement needs were. It's you know, we had to deliver on the Aimpoint thing, right? It has to be the toughest thing that we can make. It's got to be fail proof. It's got to be something that you turn on, mount your rifle, turn on and forget, and let it fade in the process. But American law enforcement budgets right now are not great. I mean, you know, law enforcement's got a heavy lift at the moment, and so that Duty RDS was a complete redesign of the red dot sight. You know, from the ground up. Yeah, exactly.
So it's really a clean sheet optic.
It 100% is, yeah. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but the glass is fantastic. All of the things that are hallmarks of the brand, it carries. It does well. So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but yes, it absolutely does. We respond in to the extent that we can to what those folks need, because, well, first and foremost, we believe in what they're doing. And every single person that I work with in Aimpoint, and I'm thinking as I'm saying this, but every single person that I work with at Aimpoint has a kind of a mission orientation towards that. In Inc is the U.S. brand, and the Swedes as well. They have a mission-oriented, very dedicated approach to supporting military and law enforcement communities. They're essentially, they come first. You know,
even though it's a hunting brand by DNA.
Yeah, exactly.
By
right.
pedigree.
Yeah, and in our hunting, I would love to see it grow. I think it'd be very cool, very, very neat for hunting to grow in the U.S. But as of right now, military and law enforcement and commercial users command the field in the U.S. And we do respond, as best we can. But it does work in reverse.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So you and I have a lot of. We geek out a lot to design and philosophy about design and design principles and science, all kinds of things. So
we just geek out a lot.
We just geek out a lot, right? And in a lot of those conversations, we've talked about how biology influences product design in all kinds of things. And from those conversations, I've gleaned that Aimpoint has actually a tremendous amount of biology baked in. And to be blunt, it's not biology, it's not science that we consumers actually get to see in the brand.
That's the truth.
But I think this would be a neat opportunity. I think there's a lot of Aimpoint consumers, myself included. As you know, I've been a paying Aimpoint customer for the better part of 14 years. And I didn't know a lot of these biology stories. Can you tell us a little bit? Like, let's just take this P-2 for example. Can you tell us about some of the science and the biology
Sure.
that maybe people don't get to experience every day, or maybe they don't even know anything about?
Yeah. How much time have you got?
This is our show, so we got all the time we want.
So it's a great question. It's a fantastic question. If you, in the class I teach, that
And we learned a lot of it today.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about. Yeah, there's a context lacking in the conversation, generally speaking. Today, I think that we are in a very cost-driven or consumer-driven market, and a lot of those fundamentals, those being biological contexts, are kind of lost to that. And it's kind of esoteric, but I'll explain. So we do our best to make an optic that won't fail, that can't fail. And what I mean by when I say consumer-driven market, what that would mean to the consumer-driven market is it's good value. It's not going to fail. I pay the money, and I don't have to pay the money again because it doesn't fail. We make these optics because some of the people that use them, probably the vast minority of people that use them, bet their lives on them. They bet their lives on them. So they can't fail. So let's take the P-2 for example, as we talked about. It was the ACRO series was the first to introduce an enclosed emitter on a pistol-mounted optic. Well, the reason it's important is because when you put a pistol-mounted optic on your pistol, there's a lot of pistols in there. When you put a pistol-mounted optic on, you are giving this little machine the entire responsibility of the aiming process. That's what you're doing. And so when you're engaging, whatever it is, if you're hunting with it, or if you're shooting paper, or qualifying, or God forbid you're shooting your way out of a problem, you can't afford in that moment for something bad to happen, something small bad to happen, because your biology is designed essentially in extremis to be extremely simple. It reduces the world to really two decisions, leave or fight it out. And that's what you're designed for. That's what your biology wants you to do. And if everybody thinks about it, you've been in a situation where that's happened, you feel kind of dumb when there's an explosion near you or something, everything kind of, the world shrinks. Certainly your ability to think through things shrink. If in one of those scenarios, something gets in the way, something very small, like your shake awake thing doesn't work, or something like that, that red dot doesn't appear, it's not a simple problem.
Right, that's a complex problem.
Yeah, it's a complex problem. It's a hugely complex problem because it requires a creative response in that moment. So that's what this thing is designed for. So we designed these things for that 1% user. Everybody else benefits from it, but that 1% user, and that's why they gravitate to them. Yeah. These 1% users, they want this because it doesn't fail. And to a person, when I'm talking to people, that's when those pros, that's what they say. I want this thing because it will not fail, because they understand that in the moment when you're falling out of the airplane, living through the avalanche, holding your breath in deep water, if this fails in the slightest way, it's a huge thing. Yeah. It's a huge, huge thing. So I think, over the last, say, 20 years, when we were, engaged in a very long war, we had some reference from that, where people came back and were like, well, that thing works, I'm not gonna. And now we're kind of moving away from that into this, as I say, this kind of more consumer-driven market, and that's where cost and price and those kinds of things. But Aimpoint's not going to change that. It's not going to do that.
Yeah. Do you think that in this, as we've the wars have wound down and we're now out of them, do you think that we've sort of lost focus about what these tools are really designed for?
Yes.
We mentioned in a reel the other day, foundationally, ice plate, ice fence, everything that we build on our mill line is built to fight.
Yeah.
And it seems like sometimes, when we look at any of these markets, right, optics, for the purposes of this conversation, when we talk about features that are neat digitally,
yeah,
right, for short attention spans or whatnot, do you think that those have kind of lost sight of really that our tools are really built for fighting?
Yes, absolutely. So it's funny that you say that, because the way now this is very personal, I'm not speaking for Aimpoint here, but when you have something like this, a pistol-mounted optic that has, we'll call them features, a lot of different features scrolling through, I see that as an inlet for failure. I really do. What I want is simple and extremely robust.
Yep.
Especially on a pistol, for goodness sakes. Being able to scroll through reticles and colors and all that stuff, that sounds great. It's feature driven. That's that consumer market that I'm talking about.
Yep.
They're selling the thing. I don't need to be sold that. What I want, and when the ACRO first came out, I heard this a lot. It's just so big and ugly. I thought, It's a professional's tool.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Yeah, so is a hammer.
Right.
You know, yeah, they're not pretty.
I mean, scalpels aren't even particularly pretty,
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Their form is driven by their function.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what this is. You know, it is, that thing is designed to live through anything that you ask of it and more, importantly. You know.
So speaking of the P2's design, I'm really glad that you touched on that, because if you remember, like, and for the purposes of this video, you know, it should be noted that my personal P2, we paid cash for, right? It was not given. This video is purely because you and I are fans of design, right? There's really no other reason for it. We're fans of design, and we wanted to share some of that philosophical foundation with other people. We think that there's other geeks out there like us that would appreciate it, right? And if you remember, I don't know if you remember the first time I called you after I shot it, and I told you that I had spent 500 plus rounds on other open emitter optics, and I had returned them because I could not get the hang of it. I'm not a particularly good shooter, but I still couldn't get the hang of it, you know? And then I put the P2 on, and I was able to connect in one mag.
Yeah.
And you said, well, that makes perfect sense, right? Because that your biology, it has everything to do with your biology.
Yeah.
And you shared a little bit with us about in class today. Can you kind of like give some of the audience the backstory behind why big and size in the P2 is actually working to our advantage, and explains why I was able to connect in one mag.
Most people do.
Versus the other ones, because that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's not an uncommon experience. So it has a lot to do with the way we see. We see in kind of this edge definition. So as you're presenting that pistol, it's telling you this big block on the top of it has three-dimensional cues. So you can absolutely see, you can drive the pistol. And the great thing about it is a lot of that work is being done kind of asympathetically. It's not costing you anything. You're not spatially negotiating with the pistol as you would if you were presenting that front sight and driving into the context of the rear. So that's one thing, is this three-dimensional cues on the outside. Also, it has a kind of a tunneling effect. So if you have a single pane optic, format optics, you know, like any open emitter, you don't have that. You don't have this kind of tunneling. We are very, very good at kind of geometric recognition. Humans are very, very good at geometric recognition. So as you're presenting the pistol, you can tell if it's off to the left, and if you're right-handed, that's what it's going to be. You know, left-handed, right, you know, off to the right. You can see that, and you're making those corrections, although you don't think about it. And that's a very, very important thing.
You can feel it. Actually.
You absolutely
can feel the bandwidth getting taxed.
Yes, absolutely right. It's funny you say that, because when I'm teaching these things, I tell you, like I told you today, if you're working as hard as you were with irons, it's not working.
Yeah.
You know, the tool is not working. What I want out of my classes is board shooters. I want board shooters that are generating the outcome they're looking for. So driving the 1-inch hole or whatever they're doing, I really look for the yawns.
Yeah.
You know, bang, bang, oh my gosh, when are we doing this next thing? Well, that's a fantastic thing, because what it's telling me is that you're not working, and this is helping you do it. This is an implement, not an impediment.
Well, I think we saw that today with the wind sprints, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
With the stress, you know, the high heart rate shooting.
Yeah.
It was super easy to connect with the P2 in a way that I've never experienced with irons.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, you know, 100-yard wind sprint is a piece of cake to connect with. You know, what were those? I don't know, 4-inch dots or whatever.
Yeah, or less.
Or 6.
Yeah.
They weren't big.
No, they weren't big.
But you didn't even feel it. You didn't even think about it.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
effortless.
And that is the perfect statement. You didn't have to think about it.
Yeah, and we did them repeatedly. I don't even remember how many sprints did we do today? I don't know.
Yeah, some of the folks, it was a lot more.
No, I don't know, maybe 10 or something like that.
Yeah,
but it was
a lot.
It was easy to connect on paper on a fairly tight target.
Yeah, after sprinting. Repeatedly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a tool, and I constantly say that if it's not easier, it's not a tool. If it's harder, it's not working to help you.
And this is some of the nuance that I think probably gets lost in very two-dimensional digital formats.
Yes,
right?
that's true. Yeah.
And we have short attention spans today. Some of it our fault, some of it, you know, kind of imposed on us.
Yeah, certainly.
Right. But this type of nuance is something that, you know, if you understand it, right, if you can have the opportunity to learn about it, and let alone experience it, you know, we're not ones to really talk about price, but really it's a bargain. It's a miracle that it only costs $600.
I very much agree.
I mean, that's how I feel personally, having paid for it.
Yeah.
And it's almost as much as the gun, but to be honest, I felt that it made what I love the Glock. Right. I mean, I carried one on duty for my entire time and trusted my life to it.
Yeah.
It literally made the gun twice as good.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I think it's more than that. I really do think it's more than that. If you put irons or plastics on the pistol, and you try to do what you did, even if you connect, it'll take you longer, and much more importantly, it will take capacity from you. And that's the same exact capacity that you would use to determine if that's a cell phone in their hand or a gun in their hand or
shoot,
a flashlight in their hand. Absolutely. That's the capacity that you're using under stress. That's what's going on. So when you are required to look through this thing at your threat, you are seeing that. You are seeing that. Now your capacities may be limited in those terms as well, but at least you are giving that shooter, that police officer, the biggest advantage that they can harvest from this thing by looking at it and not working as hard. They're not displacing that atrophied capacity that they have under stress.
Yeah, I mean, you could really feel it when you got back to the line from the sprint. Focusing on the target was, actually, I didn't even think of it.
Most people don't, and that's why I do those kinds of things.
Really awesome.
I try and get your head off of the gun, because if you're thinking about the gun, you're the electrician thinking about the screwdriver, and that doesn't make much sense.
And for the record, if I can do that, that means literally anybody on planet Earth can do it.
You're a good shooter.
So there's a lot of, Aimpoint has a lot of competition now, and the market is more crowded than when Aimpoint started. And I think that one of the things that I know I do a lot of research when I'm going to spend $600 to $1,000. Can you help shed some light and tell us what some of the differences are between Aimpoint's offerings and, say, those red dot offerings from Vortex or Holosun or anybody else?
I think so, or at least I hope so. I think, well, first of all, I know the president of the company. I can walk in his office if I can, and anybody can. And when you go to Sweden, the company is very much a small family. I think people think that Aimpoint is this, Aimpoint Towers and colossal. And certainly, I'm not saying that we don't have capacities for production stuff. We certainly do, but it really is a very tight-knit group of people coalescing around this mission. This these sites' mission for our end users.
Do you think it's more of a boutique operation than people appreciate?
I mean, don't get me wrong. That CCO was a huge contract that they filled. I say they because I was on the other side then, right?
You were on the user side,
right?
Then, yeah.
And they were able to do it beautifully, and they're able to do it now. But I think that Aimpoint has maintained kind of that ethos about them. It's just it's close enough that we can reach across the table and say, hey, did you do this, or shake hands about something or like that. At SHOT Show, the whole company comes together and we sing. We have a dinner at the Friday at the end, and we all sing songs, and it's just that kind of company. So that's one thing, and that's probably not why you should buy an Aimpoint optic, but maybe it is. You know what I mean?
Because that makes it into the product.
It makes it into the product, yeah. So we, to a person at Aimpoint, we are dedicated to those end users. And I know that sounds almost glib, but here's a good example. So a lot of the stuff that comes in now, the supply chain's lagging, and people are finally getting things to Aimpoint. I can tell you that Aimpoint will not relent on its commitment to raw material quality. It will not. It won't. It just won't make the things. It badly needs to make these things, and just like everybody badly needs to make, everybody needs to make something. It will not relent. It will not do that. It will not bring something like that to market, and I love that.
I mean, that's why it's one of the many reasons or things that Aimpoint does that go into a product that 14 years later, I've never spent money on anybody else's optic.
Yeah. Well, so interestingly, at Malmo, at the factory at Malmo, there's one room for warranty fixes. I forgot how long I was there. I never saw it manned. There was never anyone in it, and it's small. It's probably 10 by 6 or something like that. It's a very small room.
Relative to the size of the company, I'm sure it's tiny.
It's tiny. It's fractional to the size of the company. The coffee rooms are much bigger than this, and they are there. But they just endow so much strength in the product when they make it that it's just not going to fail. I go back to that moment then, when I was coming out of this primary school, and I was not happy because the optic, the sight that I was using would blink out. It was interesting. It was like a battery compression problem that they had, but it would blink out. And it was enough to draw me back into the optic. It was enough to to distract me. And I remember worrying about it. And then I remember getting to my unit and getting that comp M4, and which seems so big now, but yeah, getting that
so
comp M4, an utterly complete. I mean, completely reliable. The things that thing lived through, I can't tell you. But I mean, I have to kill you if I, they're just completely tough. And I remember just falling in love with that idea that no matter what happens, that thing is going to work. So that's something that I can take off my list to think about or to worry about. Because worrying about it to get through the school, because it was a highly competitive thing, was enough to give me pause. That kind of, in a nutshell, that commitment to making this no-fail thing is enough, in my opinion. I'm not the kind of guy that wants to spend. I'm not the kind of person that wants to spend less money and buy those inlets for failure. Because that's what you're doing, essentially. In my opinion, this is not. I'm not speaking for Aimpoint here. I'm speaking for me.
No, we think the same way this way.
Yeah, well, and I'll be honest with you. You said we have a lot of competitors. I like to think of it kind of another way. I don't think we have many competitors. I don't think Aimpoint
I don't think so. I think that the market feels that you have.
Yeah, exactly right. The market is filling in this segment, but Aimpoint's like the little chugging train. It's not going to change what it does, because in our opinion, it's working. In your opinion, it's working. And people that demand
carried one every day.
Yeah, exactly right. People that demand a true professional's tool, something that just will not fail, I think are willing to do what it takes to get that. I was absolutely willing to do what it took, to get that. I could carry just about anything I wanted to, and I absolutely insisted on that. And so, in fact, when the T2s came about, I was loath to go to them because I just trusted this Comp M4, and I'm like, why would I change that? My boys were so embarrassed by that, Chief carrying around this massive thing, what I mean? But anyway, so I know that kind of is, this long circuitous answer, but I really think that I always make when I'm talking to people in Aimpoint or without, I always make the comparison to Bentley. I always do, because Bentley is just kind of unapologetically what they do. You know what I mean? Yeah, of course you can buy a cheaper car. You know what I mean? But that's not what Bentley's really looking for. Yeah, exactly right. And I'm not saying that we're a luxury product. I am saying we're a premium product. In my opinion, Aimpoint's a premium product because what you're buying is this no-fail, hard, professional, always going to be there. Walk through the Armageddon and still be on. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of what it is.
I mean, we didn't have as much choice as you did. We have a choice between Aimpoints and Neotechs, and I remember shooting both on the range and just be like, I'll take that one.
Yeah, I think that one is. Yeah, exactly right.
I don't even know why, but I'll take that one.
Yeah.
And now I've learned why.
They have this, well, some people say they have this very stubborn insistence on the red dot. It's this brilliant dedication to simplicity.
Yeah.
And that's, as we learned today, right? Simplicity wins, complexity kills.
Yeah.
You can ask for all of these things, and you can put all kinds of things all over this. Again, consumer-driven market kind of thing. It's not making it any better. In fact, in my opinion, it's an inlet for failure. And Aimpoint has this, again, it's this lovely, stubborn insistence that we are going to make the most simple and the toughest thing that we can possibly make and put it in the hands of a professional, unapologetically.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it works for high-end professionals, it'll literally work for anybody.
For anybody,
right? Because
that's exactly
the situations will become less intense, or they'll have fewer stressors.
Right.
So and we had touched on it a little bit earlier, and a little bit with I didn't know subconsciously why I made the choice to carry an Aimpoint, on duty as opposed to an EOTech, but I remember. I think if I recall, we were presented with XPS 2-2s, which had a 68 MOA reticle, and I believe that they had 2 holdover dots in the middle, right? And I remember thinking when we were in the classroom getting our training on like, okay, before you guys go pick, this is what this one does and this is what this one does. I remember I was like, oh, I'm going to get the EOTech because that has all this information on the screen. And then when we actually put rounds downrange, I was like, where does that, and I didn't know what was going on, right? I was just like, I'm going with that one because I know I'm just supposed to put that thing on the target. And, we were accountable for every round that leaves the barrel, no matter,
absolutely.
it is a hard and absolute thing, and we're staring at prison on the other end of that decision, right?
Yeah, because you're going to need a school bus.
Right. And so I just remember subconsciously thinking like, well, that was an easy decision, and I connected on that one every single time. I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
Right? And then we learned today that it's actually simplicity and bandwidth. So
yeah, that's exactly right. If you think that you can negotiate with that kind of thing, well, first of all, so I can get caught on this long picture here, but if you go to the professional's professional and you say, well, that's what they use.
Right.
Well, that doesn't necessarily correlate. So if you shoot 50,000 rounds a year, then maybe there's some correlation. Or if you have deep context for violence, someone that's been at war for the last 25 years or something along those lines, then possibly you can use
you can have more information on
exactly right, this tool. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you, if you don't, all you're doing is creating failure. Now you're the inlet for failure,
right?
Because you're going to lift that gun or present that gun, and you're going to be dazzled. You're going to have to negotiate with all of this information.
You're throwing more data into the processor.
Absolutely, right? And your biology is going the other way, entirely the other way. This is behavior and biology clashing as opposed to working in the in this good flow. Yeah, it's like doing math in a sneeze, as I said today, right? If you think you can do that, absolutely, be my guest, but I don't think you can.
No. I mean, I don't even think I was a year out of the academy before we had a patrol rifle selection. And it was like, there was no way I had the skills to be able to handle all that information. And it was only 3 data sets, right? It was like 68 MOA and then 2 little holdover things, but that was overwhelming in a lot of ways. Well, I think I didn't appreciate that it was overwhelming at the time. Right?
Yeah.
But it was much more difficult to use. I just didn't know why.
Putting on a variable low power optic, and it had all kinds of stadia lines and lead generation, but it was supposed to it was lit, so it was supposed to be good for close in. And I remember coming up and going, "Whoa, holy smokes!" That's a calculator in front of me. I don't want that. What I mean? A simple red dot, and 200 meters is very, very easy offhand. Work a holdover. It's very simple. But yeah, for the vast majority of people, a simple red dot is absolutely the answer. Yeah, absolutely. And they're very stubborn about it, and I love it.
I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too.
Buck, thanks so much for taking the time to share a little bit of the BTS, the behind the scenes about Aimpoint and the foundation and the philosophy. I think people will find it really interesting. I know I
hope so.
Find it really interesting. I could talk about this stuff with you all day. Well, actually, we do talk.
We do.
But thanks again for coming out. We really enjoyed having you out here, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great time.